A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, on the last day of the International Conference on Agricultural Statistics, we have the last session. This is the plenary session on financing agricultural statistics. The chair of the session is Mr. Jose Rosero Moncayo, Director, Statistics Division, FAO Rome. And we have the panelists. First panelist is Her Excellency Hang Lina, Director General, National Institute of Statistics, Cambodia. Mr. Gero Carletto, Lead Economist, World Bank, Washington. Mr. Dominic Roskert, President, Statistics, Poland. Mr. Nagaraj Rao, Statistics, Asian Development Bank. Mr. Ben Paul Mungereza, Manager, Statistics Capacity Building, Asian Development Bank. So we had few changes in this because few people are not available as panelists, and now we have this group of panelists, and we are very fortunate to have with them on the dais to share their experiences. And now I would request and hand over the dais to the chair of this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear friends, welcome to the last of the sessions of this 8th International Conference on Agricultural Statistics. A session that is going to discuss the important topic on financing agricultural statistics. For that, we will have a panel of very distinguished people. But before introducing the panelists, let me introduce at the same time the objective of this session, or the motivation for this session. I would like to start by saying, can we have the presentation, please? Presentation. Yes, okay, good. Let me start saying that the session is proposed around 4 observed facts, okay? First fact. The first fact is about the high level of importance of agriculture for poverty reduction policies and for the economy of low and lower middle income countries. The evidence shows that poverty is high in the rural sector and that the rural population is highly dependent of the income that comes from agriculture. Just as a matter of example, we can see in this map of the world which is the importance of the employment in agriculture in the total employment. And we can see, okay, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa, that between 50, let's put it this way, that more than 50% of the total employment is employment on agriculture. And we know that also in sub-Saharan Africa, we can find the highest levels of poverty. But we also see high level of employment of agriculture in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Again, what we want to highlight is the importance of agriculture for poverty reduction and the economy of the countries. What is the second fact? The second fact is the increased demand, okay? And we can all agree, and we have been hearing this for the last 4 days, the increased demand for high quality and granular statistics in general, and for agricultural statistics in particular. On the MDG era, we had very few, if any, indicators of the agricultural sector. Now in the SDG agenda, at least FAO is custodian of 21 of these indicators. So this increased demand is motivated by this global SDG agenda, but not only because of that, it's also driven by the regional agendas and also the national agendas. We cannot forget about the national agendas, and as policymakers get more and more awareness about planning and the importance of data, they are requesting as well much more data to be produced at country level. Third fact, okay? We observe low levels of investment in statistics. Let me give you some statistics coming from Paris 21, in which we see that between 2016 and 2017, the money from official data development assistance that goes to data and statistics, if it is true that rose 11% in this period from 623 million to 689 million, if we just convert that in terms of what it represents on the total of resources of dedicated, resources coming from official development assistance, is only a mere 0.34% in 2017, and has not changed substantially. Okay, in 2015 was as well 0.3%. Okay, so if it is true that in terms of quantity, in terms of amount, this has increased in the last period, in terms of, in relative term, has been stable. Apart from that, it has been as well estimated that international funding for data and statistics is only around half the level that it needs to be in order to be able to monitor the Sustainable Development Agenda, as established in the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development data. What is the fourth fact? The fourth fact is that I would like to make the case that if there is already low levels of investment in statistics, there are even lower levels of investment in agricultural statistics. Even if it is true that there is no such a thing as statistics on, there is no data on what is the level of investment on agricultural statistics, what we can present is the Agricultural Orientation Index that shows what is the government spending on agriculture in relationship to its contribution to the economy. And we have seen that those resources fell from 0.42 in 2001 to 0.26 as an index on 2017. What it shows basically is that there is less government spending on agriculture if we compare this spending to its contribution to the respective economies. All of these facts configure the mother of all ironies, okay? I'm not going to call it the mother of all ironies, which is this one, okay? Which is basically the frustrated statistician, and let me be biased on agriculture. So this is the frustrated agricultural statistician that, despite the fact of knowing that his work is extremely relevant, finds itself in a situation in which resources are scarcely available. So given this context, the objective of this session are, first, to discuss the main drivers that explain the lack of investment in statistics, and especially in agricultural statistics. To discuss the strategies that country offices are following to overcome these problems. To discuss how multilateral organizations and donors are facing the call for increased resources for data and statistics, and to discuss the roles of private organizations, governmental and international organizations in investing in better statistics. In other words, this session is about how we can transform this frustrated statistician to this type of statisticians that are happy because they have the resources that they needed in order to collect data and fulfill their mandates. With that introduction, let me go to the panelists. We have the pleasure to have two directors of national statistical offices. We have Her Excellence Han Lina, Director General of the National Institute of Studies of Cambodia, and we have Dr. Dominic Roskrut, that is the Director General of Statistics Poland. And I have at my right side three representatives of international organizations, multilateral organizations. We have Mr. Carlogero Carleto, that is manager of at the World Bank Data Group. We have Mr. Ben Paul Mungerezzo, that is the manager of statistical capacity development in the African Development Bank. And we have Mr. Nagran Rao, that is a statistician at the Asian Development Bank. Let me explain what are the rules of the panel. We are going to have 2 rounds of questions. The first round, in the first round, every single one of the panelists will receive a dedicated question that they have to address, and they will have a maximum of 8 minutes to respond. Then we are going to have a second round in which we are going to do 2 questions. One that is going to be addressed to the representative of countries. They will have 5 minutes to answer the question. And then we will have a different question that will be addressed to the representative of multilateral organizations, and they will also have 5 minutes to respond. With that, I think that we can start with the panel. And our first panelist is Her Excellency Han Lina. And the question that is going to be addressed to you is the following. What do you consider? You can do it from here if you want, or you can do it from there. Okay. So the question is the following. What do you consider are the main drivers or obstacles to explain the observed low levels of investments at the governmental and also on the side of the donors, on statistics, and in particular on agricultural statistics? At the same time, what strategies have your office adopted or is thinking of adopting to mobilize more resources? The floor is yours.
I don't know how to open this one. Who can open? Huh?
Let's move. Close.
Một cái nào vậy? Yes, first let me respect to you all, Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I am here now to present to you about the experience of the financing agriculture statistics in Cambodia. Let me first show you where Cambodia is located. This is the map of Cambodia. That Cambodia is located in the Southeast Asia, border to Vietnam in east and southeast, and border to Thailand in west and southwest, and to Laos in the north. Our population, according to the result of the currently census, so that our population in Cambodia stood at 15.3 million. Among that is female is 50.5% and male 48.5%. And for the budget of agriculture in 2013, in 2013, the NIS conducted the first agriculture census of Cambodia that funded by the FAO, USAID, OSAID, SIDA, about 3.88 million, and Royal Government of Cambodia share 1.4 million. So in total, we have spent about 5.30 million for the census in 2013. The result of the Cambodia agriculture census in 2013 were released in 2015 by Samdech Prime Minister, and he's very satisfied with the result, and he directs the National Institute of Statistics to continue to strengthen the implementation plan and the mandate of the master plan for statistics to prepare a national strategy for development of statistics. Now we already drafted and already published the national strategy for development plan for development of statistics 2019 and 2023. We will submit to all development partner and for the data user to consider about the contribute to the statistic activity. In addition, the Prime Minister commended work to continue to strengthen the national statistical system based on stronger regulatory framework and at the same time to improve the management of the statistical system to strengthen coordination mechanism with development partners. In the past and at the time of the Cambodia agriculture census, the major census and survey activity conducted by the royal government of Cambodia rely on major funding from the donors. But in the past several years, these funds have declined substantially, and now there is a major responsibility for the royal government of Cambodia to support the production of statistics from domestic funds. The rapid transition from major donor contribution to limit support was not planned and shifted a major burden to the national budget. According to the statistic law, the National Institute of Statistics is required to conduct an intercensual survey every 5 years after the conduct of census. In 2018, the intercensual agricultural survey was due because of the Cambodian national election. We postponed the survey to 2019. Other major survey and census activity were also postponed, and the financial burden on government has rapidly increased. This situation has highlighted the need for coordination and strategic direction and for the rationalization of statistical activity. The Ministry of Planning, the National Institute of Statistics, and the Ministry of Economic and Finance are all involved in discussion of financing. The development partner also need to take on a more strategic approach in their support for statistics, and direction have been provided through the Prime Minister's annual dialogue with the UN, through the technical working group, and in bilateral discussion with key partner. I want to tell that the dialogue between the UN and the Prime Minister had been conducted on the 24th June this year, and then the representative of the UN have a request to Prime Minister to consider about the importance of statistics and request to allocate more budget for the statistic activity. So the Prime Minister already agree with the suggestion and have appointed to the Ministry of Economic and Finance to allocate more budget for the statistic activity. And one more thing also, UN recommend to the Prime Minister that have to improve the capacity building to the statistic system. So this one also, Prime Minister also appointed to the Ministry of Economic, Ministry of Education, to put the program for the statistic study in the university, all for the government university as well as the private sector also. As a result of the some intention discussion late in 2018, the Agricultural Integrated Survey Program, Agri-Survey, funded primarily by USAID, FAO, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation selected Cambodia to participate in the program. This gave Cambodia a great opportunity as the first country in the region to implement AGRI's program, starting with the Cambodia International Agricultural Survey 2019 and continue on an annual basis. This is the budget for the Agri Survey in 2019. We have in total 548,000 US dollar, and that we separate into a part. For one is for the household agri survey, total is 442,000, and for non-household agriculture survey, total 106,000 US dollar. The budget from annual agri survey 2020, the total budget is 1.2 million, and will be Royal Government of Cambodia will increase to more than the development partner. Yes, in CIAS 2019, for the budget from the from development partner is about 80%, and the government only 20%. But in the next year, 2020, the budget from the government will be 80%, and then the development partner will be only 20%. The Cambodia International Agriculture Survey 2019 was implemented under the leadership of National Institute of Statistics of the Ministry of Planning, in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery, and technical support by FAO with Royal Government funding of 20%. The Royal Government of Cambodia contribution is expected to be increased each year, and this is a major challenge for the government as there are major census and survey activity to be conducted each year. For this reason, we are also working on the rationalization of survey activity to ensure that data collection across all sectors is timely and efficient. The CIAS 2019 was an opportunity for using CAPI to support face-to-face interview and using survey solution program. This tool helped to speed up the data collection and cleaning process, which are now almost completed. The data collection for 16,000 agricultural households were conducted from 11 to 22nd July 2019, and the data dissemination is expected in January 2020. The relatively short time frame for the conduct of this survey shows us the possibility for increasing efficiency in conduct of national survey and the possibility for reducing costs in future. The initial cost of acquiring a tablet and training staff are actually investment for the future. After the data collection with the application of new CAPI technology, we can see the success and have gained the experience to apply for other surveys conducted by the National Institute of Statistics. Next year, we plan to collect expanded data for fishery. This is under negotiation, and I hope to get more funds from the other development partner who can see how the CIAS 2019 has been also able to produce timely data, to share those data with users, and to move forward with plan for the wider system of open data for the national interest. National Institute of Statistics will continue to persuade area for greater efficiency and will investigate possible efficiency with linking the annual agricultural survey and the Cambodia Socio-Economic Survey of Household. While National Institute of Statistics will continue to work for obtaining increased funding for agricultural statistics from the royal government, continued support from international partners is very important. Support from international partners could be in terms of financial support, technical assistance, and support in advocacy for greater resources for statistical information. Yes, that's all of my presentation, and I hope welcome to any question, and I try my best to answer. If I cannot answer, my colleague who work directly with the Agri Survey, he also coming with me. He can answer, So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Lina. So, Mrs. Lina. So, I would just want to highlight some of the points of your presentation. So, you have highlighted the importance of having a continuing support for international partners. You also highlighted the importance of the need of internal coordination between the different institutions inside of a government. You have mentioned the coordination between the Minister of Planning, the Minister of Finance, and the National Statistical Office in order to be able to plan for adequate resources for the statistical activities. But at the same time, you have highlighted the importance of rationalization, of rationalizing statistical activities according to specific plans for the country, of course making very clear priorities and trying to get an equilibrium between the funds coming from international partners and the funds coming from the government. With that being said, I want to give the floor to Mr. Dominik Roskrut, head of the National Office of Poland. And for you, Dominik, I have the following question. So, do you feel sympathetic with the photo of the frustrated statistician that we just described for developing countries? Because I am interested very much on your developed country perspective. It is true that you mentioned yesterday that within the European context, Poland can be seen as a developing country, but in general, your country is perceived as a developed country. So, all of these observed facts that I presented in my introduction, are they relevant to you? And if so, what are the drivers of this situation, and what are the strategies that your office has put in place in order to be able to mobilize resources, more resources for agricultural statistics? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jose. First, I'd like to start with this photo. Actually, it was a photoshopped version of me because I look much worse than that. You know, it's just like every day I struggle with the issues related to some degree with the lack of financing. And I think, from my perspective, of someone who is attending many international meetings at the level of DGs, you know, we all complain about it. And I guess from this perspective, the difference in between the developed and developing countries is not that huge. We all share the same problems. And I can tell you, you know, first of all, we have to explain to our stakeholders that statistics is very important, and we know that by heart. But you know, mostly people outside of our premises, they don't know it. Even if they say it, they just don't feel it. I can tell you. And but the most important thing is that statistics doesn't come from heaven. It comes at a substantial cost. This is a sentence that I hear very often in my Council of Statistics from the representative of the National Bank of Poland. He's advantaged with the fact that he's got a lot of money for statistics, but he works for the National Bank, and we do not have the same resources as they have. And even I can tell you from our perspective, we are relatively highly ranked compared to the other countries because our statistics office is ranked as a ministry itself. So I'm even a minister of the government. But does it make my life easier? No. At the end of the year, I find myself in the same queue, in the same line, outside the Ministry of Finance, standing with the other ministers, and all of them say to me, you didn't stand here, your position is there at the end of the line, you know. And I used to make this joke that my independence, or our independence as statisticians, is ending in the budget of the Ministry of Finance. This is the limit for the independence, because if we don't have money, we can't do things, you know. So we are so pushed recently that we had to even, we are trying to establish kind of a framework both at the national and the European level of negative priorities on the basis of which we will try to decide of you know, just like cutting some of the statistics because we cannot afford of paying for them. So, but anyway, of course, there has to be some kind of a response from us, and that's the second part of the question. I'd like to refer to that. What we are trying to do in order to sustain our capacity to produce what we think is the most important issue. And ironically, I can stress this, that this is very ironic for me, who is a statistician by heart. I'm lecturing at the university at the same time. I'm of course, statistics and econometrics. And my experience from university is that no matter how proud I am of myself of putting a very complicated formula and deriving the complicated formula on the table, when I turn back, I see some of the students are not paying attention, and these are students at the university. So imagine what happens outside of the premises of the university, in the general society. It's very hard to convey the message of statistics. It's very hard. So I'd like to stress, this is the irony, that the first and the most important thing is good communication, and you need to communicate not only to the public, just how to use statistics, but also to other stakeholders, like other ministries within your government, to NGOs and all the interested bodies, that the role of statistics, how important it is, kind of like establish an emotional relationship in between you and these organizations in order to kind of like increase their awareness of your existence. So simple, but this is so important. I would like to point you to two remarks that I have about avoiding the traps of poor communication. First one, and then it's not enough to tell everyone over and over again this is important. You need to actually show that this is important by doing something that really is an argument proving that this is important. So you need to be part of a process, of some kind of a governmental process in which you're producing some statistics and the actual decisions are being taken, and it's very explicitly explained that these statistics influence these decisions, so that everybody sees this is a necessary part of every kind of like initiative at the government level. This is the first thing. And the second trap of the poor communication is, which is probably very important now, never try to say that the new methods will going to make your statistics cheaper, because this is not true. They will probably make your statistics cheaper in a sense of what you're producing nowadays, but these new technologies open up new possibilities, and you certainly want to take advantage of these new possibilities, and of course you will need some budget for that. So just never try to find yourself in a trap that you have established yourself saying that this is going to be cheaper. No, you need a lot of money to expand and extend your statistical measurement systems. Okay, after just continuing this communication issue, good relationships with stakeholders is an important issue. Please do acknowledge that there is a competition in the public sector as well, so you're competing with other bodies, and either you will lose or someone else will lose, so don't bother with the others, just try to promote your own organization as much as possible. Then what I would like to suggest to you, SDGs constitute a fantastic platform for communicating and promoting the importance of statistics. And the reason for that is that if you jump over this platform and use it to promote your statistics, you'll get additional promotion from outside, because there are so many organizations nowadays dealing with the SDGs. So when you will integrate into this process, this will help to communicate your own intentions as well. Set yourself ambitious goals. That's very important. Like I used to say to my people, we are currently ranked 4th in the world in the open data ranking, and it's very important for me. And I tell them every day we have to be first in the next round. We are actually first in the dimension of coverage, which also covers agricultural statistics, which we are very proud of. But this ambitious goal helps to people to concentrate on the most important things. And I used to say recently when we are in the process of organizing both of our censuses, agricultural and population census, that my secret recipe for a successful census is 10% of technology, 90% of communication, so that everybody knows what we are doing it for. Okay, this is one thing, one big thing, communication, but it's of course just a necessary, but not all, you know. And so the second thing that I would like to stress is we should try to integrate, and that's what we do, we try to integrate into development agenda of our country. We have a overall strategy for the country, long-term strategy, which is called responsible development strategy. And since the beginning, we try to push ourselves into the agenda, being mentioned as many times as possible, being mentioned in a particular big governmental initiatives as a body delivering measurement system. So in order to become part of something that is bigger than us, and then everybody, when they see the documents, they see that we are there, and when there is some budget for some initiative, the part of the budget is right away allocated to us as well. So it's not like an automatic decision, but because we took care at the beginning, then we're getting money in the future. And part of this is we have developed a big database of all the indicators that are used to measure the progress of all the strategies in our country, starting with the biggest one and going to the very local level of communities. If they have like strategies, they can find their own community in our database and see the indicators they have chosen themselves and see what are the results. So this is kind of a communication strategy as well. The third thing that I would like to stress after the communication and this deep integration in the long-term agenda, development agenda, is strategic partnerships. So we can't do our things anymore alone. You know, we have to be in a close cooperation with the academia, with the non-governmental sector, with the business sector itself. I can tell you we are engaging recently into initiatives with the business sector which wants to prove their impact or input into SDGs, and they're trying to cooperate with us to build kind of a measurement system for that. And again, this is important from the statistical point of view, but also from the communication point of view. Then the last thing, the big thing that I would like to mention is that we are trying to remember, we do that, and I would suggest it to everyone else. We have our own R&D agenda, research and development agenda, because I strongly believe that 10% of what we spend today in our budget, which is allocated to, well, more or less R&D, is going to be 100% of our activities in 10 years. So we have to act like a private sector, like a private company. If you want to sustain your future, you know, you need to invest into the development, and you need to do it, of course, in the strategic partnerships, probably with the academia, with the research institutes. We have currently 3 big R&D projects sponsored by our R&D agencies sponsoring research and development in Poland. They paid us a lot of money. One of these projects, the effects of it were presented during this conference. It relates to satellite imagery. So kind of like we are trying to use different perspectives or different platforms to attract as much of money that we can attract towards what we think is the most important at the end. I mean, producing reliable, good statistics. So this is basically my answer.
No, thank you, Dominic, for your very complete presentation of a country case. You have highlighted the importance of communication to let our citizens to know that we exist and that we basically are part of their lives and that we basically have something to tell them. So I have always conceived statisticians as storytellers, because that's exactly what we do. We tell stories. We describe realities, and behind all those numbers are the realities of women, men, children that we have to tell in order for them to be accounted for development. You have also highlighted the importance of the SDG as a platform to promote the statistics, which I think that is a very important remark. As well, the importance of integrate your work plan, okay, in the development agenda of your country, which has a very powerful message of not going in isolation, not working in silos, but actually to integrate the work that you do to be meaningful. And you have also strengthened the importance of strategic partnerships, considering the challenge that we have with this increased demand of data that we have to produce. there is only one way. It's partnerships, partnerships, and partnerships, which I think that it was a very important point to make. Now I'm going to go to my right-hand side, and we are going to start with the representative of the World Bank, Jero Carleto, and we have a specific question that is going to be addressed to you, Jero. Considering all the demand that come from the global agendas, regional agendas, and country agendas, how is the bank preparing itself for this challenge of financially supporting countries to collect more data? How can innovative mechanisms play a role in channeling resources for data at country level? The floor is yours, Jero.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Can you hear me? No. Can I borrow yours? Okay. Somebody doesn't want me to speak. Okay, but I'll speak anyway. So first of all, let me thank Jose for taking the initiative to organize this session, because I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, and Michael Steiner can correct me because he's been to every ICAS ever done. So we never really spoke about financing of data, financing of statistics. So thanks for taking the initiative. And so in the U.S., I think it's probably everywhere, but in the U.S. they say that money cannot buy happiness, but it can certainly help improve a national statistical system. So, and that's the starting point. Like in addition to anything else that we need money on that one. But I want to take a more positive spin for once, because I don't want to be the crying statistician. I want to be in the party. Starting at least on this positive spin, based on what I've seen, I mean, in 20 years at the bank, I've been at the bank 20 years, and I've never seen so much attention paid to data. So there's a lot more attention now than ever in the past 20 years. And so, which means that there is a full commitment, at least from an institution like the World Bank, for evidence-based policy making, which means we need to create the information base for that. And that's statistics, that's data. So the premise is positive, but of course the hard job is to turn words into dollars and rupees, right? So, and that's where, like, I think probably often we come short. So I just want to give you kind of two practical examples what the World Bank is doing, has been doing more recently to address some of these issues. And again, in order to start putting gradually, I will say, I'm positive, but I'm not naive, gradually putting money where the mouth is. So one first example is what has been happening since 2015, when following the release of a paper that the bank published on measuring data deprivation in countries, where the author found that 77 countries, mostly, again, sub-Saharan Africa and small island, but 77 countries didn't have the surveys, the data to monitor poverty, which is kind of the World Bank primary mandate. And so in 2015, the World Bank president pledged to support countries, particularly IDA countries, particularly the 77 poorest countries, to increase their frequency of a high-quality survey, ideally every 3 years. So what happened since then? So from virtually zero, or at least a few dollars and cents, we're now in 3 years, we have a portfolio of $600 million going towards to support the implementation of household surveys. So that's so there's a lot of countries. $50 million. It seems like a lot of money, but if you divide across, we can do better. And how can we do better? next step in this process is we are launching a new initiative called the Data for Policy Initiative as part of the IDA 19. And so the IDA, it's a financing mechanism at the bank, and through which we pledge to support 15 countries to improve not only household surveys, but a package of statistics, which includes, fortunately, agriculture. So there's a set of priorities. There are 5 priorities, including household survey prices, censuses, economic statistics in general, and agricultural statistics. So there is an opportunity there. It's been created an opportunity. And but it's for us to take advantage of that opportunity. A second example is what it's currently ongoing, where we are creating an umbrella facility for data. What's an umbrella facility? So it's a programmatic trust fund. So it's a consolidation of donor funding into a single umbrella to support data. So that's, again, in a way, it's what has been done in the past, but putting more emphasis, putting a greater level of attention to data, and provide a functioning financing mechanism for that. And the idea is like that through this umbrella funds, we plan to leverage the much larger pie, which is World Bank investment and World Bank managed resources. So in a way, like it's a way to use some limited resources that perhaps are earmarked by donors for data, to leverage a larger pot, a larger pie. And this is the, I don't know if anybody was here yesterday at the 50 by 30 initiative. This is the rationale behind the 50 by 30 initiative in the area of agriculture statistics, more specifically in the area of agricultural and rural surveys. And so the idea there, as we presented yesterday, is to create, as we have done, to create a multi-donor trust fund, which will be part of this umbrella, because agriculture will be a sector like within the umbrella, to leverage larger resources which are available at the World Bank. So this is kind of the positive part. But of course, now let's. I want to give you a few seconds of a more down-to-earth view, a more realistic view of. In particular, I want to highlight two concerns or two things that we need to take into account. So on the one side, we need to ensure that in this positive wave, agriculture is well represented. So, and this is not always the case. So even if you think about like when we design a national strategy for the development of statistics, so agriculture is not quite, or when you have a national development strategies, agriculture is not quite there, or at least it's not there to the degree comparable and commensurate to its importance in the economy. So, and one way to do this is something that Dominic implied in his remarks. It's like we cannot continue to see agriculture as a standalone sector. I mean, agriculture is part of an economy. It's part of something larger. So whether it's a part of an economic transformation or a rural transformation process, whether it's part of a broader SDG agenda. So we need to package better. I think this is part of the communication, but also it's part of the packaging, and before we communicate how we place agriculture within the broader data agenda. And perhaps we can do a better job at that. Second, which is also something that Dominic mentioned in his remarks, is the fact that, again, this is a concern of mine, that in this discussion, I think there is a lot more attention to more data than to better data. So, and I think this is something that as a statisticians, as a community of statisticians that should care about quality as much, if not more, than quantity. So this is something that we need to make sure it doesn't get lost into the discussion, particularly because it's a lot easier ask a donor for money to produce more data than to ask a donor to give you resources to create public goods. And on this issue, it then becomes even more important because public goods, per definition, is something that it's more difficult to fund at the country level or even at the regional level. So it's something that needs to happen globally. And then, so this is why umbrella facilities like the one that we're creating, so hopefully will be a mechanism to support also an important function like a methodological development and research. And on this one, obviously, institutions like the ISI and the Committee of Agricultural Statistics, or the Association of Agricultural Economists, or the ICAS as a venue, can serve a purpose in making sure that agriculture and it gets a seat at the table.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you, Jero. Okay, so I think that your presentation has highlighted and make it very clear the new era of the World Bank in stressing the importance of data in their operations. You have presented some of the mechanisms that the bank has available in order to fund statistics. But the important thing to highlight is the new era in the bank. This specific is not only intention, it's a reality of the bank to invest resources on data. You have made a very important point. That is the one that we cannot see agriculture as a standalone issue. And we need to better package agricultural statistics in a much broader statistical agenda in order to be able to be successful, to call the attention of policymakers or the decision makers to be funded and be in the party side of the picture that we saw. So let me move now to the representative of the African Development Bank, my dear friend Ben Paul, and this is the question that I would like you to address. How do you assess the willingness of donors to invest resources in data in the African region? What are the priorities? Is agriculture one of them? What are the available mechanisms that the Africa Development Bank has at its disposal to financially assist the support of capacity development and data collection? Ben Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rosero. You know, the famous Marabo Declaration of the 10%, very few countries are respecting that. Despite the importance of agriculture on the continent, the development partners seem a bit reserved to invest in statistics. You know, there are some development partners that are well known on the African region for investing in statistics. You know, DFID, World Bank, Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, EU, and you also know that are basically, quite apart from the World Bank, these are the institutions that contributed the global strategy that benefited a number of African countries. But there seems not to be continued interest in investing in statistics by the development partners. In fact, they wait to see what countries are putting on the table so that they contribute to what has been put on the table instead of coming in to invest in statistics. And of course, this makes a bit of sense because there must be some bit of ownership, some bit of some feel of ownership by the country. Now, for us as African Development Bank, we have channels through which we provide support to statistics on the continent. And these are very many different ways through which we support. And we are big players in statistical capacity building on the African continent. The first channel of support is through our projects. And this is through the lending program of the bank. Here, you have a project in a given country, a project, say, on agriculture, or a project on energy, or road infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And then you put in a small component of statistics, only as a component. And by the way, the share of statistics in this whole mega project would be so small that it will not be seen even. And this has been, for example, we are supporting the agricultural census in Cabo Verde, and that's for the agricultural census. But we are also supporting other countries in other different areas of other different domains of statistics. So we do this through country strategy papers. But again, this requires bargaining from the country national statistics offices. Because you see, when we go to a country and the country is developing its country strategy paper, the interests of the country are borne in mind. So we cannot push that you need to include this and this and that. No. So that means we must get the national statistics offices to bargain, actually, what I call backdoor bargaining. Yes, backdoor bargaining, so that by the time you are developing the country strategy paper, there is some voice coming from behind that, yes, statistics is very important. I'll tell you that, for example, I was at DG recently. I only left last year. But before I left, I bargained for money for the agricultural census somewhere in the pipeline, and I've been told that, yes, it may come somewhere, in some project somewhere. And so that is the way to go. So that is one way that we are doing this. Of course, as I said, we support other domains. We have the census support in DRC. We are planning census support in Zambia, population census. We did an economic census in Malawi, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but we also have got the major one of our own statistical capacity building. That is a project of the bank, funded by resources of the bank, and here it doesn't go through the country. We are the ones, and it's implemented directly by our Department of Statistics. This started as far back as 2004, and these are ADF resources. We implement this, and in addition to that, we supplement it with resources from other development partners, just supplementing it. Bill Melinda Gates Foundation has been very strategic in this. EU, of course, the global strategy was another one that supported us in this endeavor. Now we've been doing this, and we do it every like 3 years. We have a project. But basically, I must warn us that this targets statistical capacity building and less on data collection. You know, data collection is a very expensive venture. Just one data collection exercise can finish all the money that you have. So we are doing more of capacity building in different domains, national accounts, ICP, agricultural statistics, and you must bear in mind that agricultural statistics is one of our priorities of the African Development Bank. We have interest in this because the agricultural statistics feeds directly into our feed agenda program for our high fives that we have in the bank. Now we also we are planning to invest in this. We have a major SASCO capacity building project that we think its resources may flow about November next year, and this will definitely invest a lot in the statistics, and agriculture is one of those areas that is being targeted. We also have got resources from MIC trust funds that we also are internal to the institution that we provide to statistics. Lastly, our other facility are the facility for transitional states. These are states in transition. They used to use a derogatory name, but we call them transitional states. They used to call them fragile, but we call them transitional states. And here we get the resources to support countries that are in that situation. And these resources again go directly to the country, but they are controlled by our transitional states department that is within the bank. So these are our dimensions through which we support statistics. And for us, we are there to stay. We are there to support statistics, and we are not about to give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben Paul, for highlighting the different mechanisms and the different efforts African Development Bank is doing in order to support countries in funding agricultural statistics. So now I'm going to move to Nagraj Rao, representative of the Asian Development Bank. And Nagraj, you have specifically the same question that it was addressed to Ben Paul. How do you assess the willingness of donors to invest resources in the Asian regions? What are the priorities? Is agricultural one of them? What are the available mechanisms that the Africa Development Bank has at its disposal to financially assist the support of capacity development and data collection? You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose, for the opportunity. I want to talk about ADB's Asian Development Bank support by first mentioning our Strategy 2030, which is our plan at the Asian Development Bank to respond to the region's changing needs. The Strategy 2030 is built on 7 different priorities, and one of them, which is a very important one, is promoting rural development and food security. And within the context of rural development and food security, the bank is trying to focus on advanced technologies to assist factor productivity, to ensure sustainable use of land and other natural resources, to ensure food safety and resource management in general. Now, in order to do all these different activities, it's very important that we have timely, reliable, and high-quality data, particularly on agriculture. And this also is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals to monitor Goal 2 particularly, but also other goals that are interrelated with Goal 2. And one of the things I do want to mention right now is the ADB recognizes the need to strengthen data in the region, and we actually recently formed a new statistics and data innovation unit as of January this year. And we're basically focusing on 3 broad areas. One is statistics capacity building. So, of course, that involves developing technical assistance projects. I'll talk more about the different mechanisms that we have for technical assistance, but also working with international organizations and other development partners to adopt international international statistical standards and really push the agenda on innovation and technology within the context of statistics capacity building. The other part, which is probably very closely related, as Jero mentioned, is this idea of conducting methodological research. I think it's very important that that when you introduce new technology, new tools, new methods, that you pilot them on a small scale, look at the advantages, the disadvantages, and then sort of fine-tune them as you go along. So we conduct a lot of methodological research. So recently, for example, on CAPI, we've done very recent studies to look at the cost implications, the reduction in errors by introducing CAPI, how respondents, for example, perceive. So research is very core and important to us. And finally, we focus on data development. So we have our key indicators publication, which is in its 50th year this year. And within the context of the publication, one of the new pieces to it is we have a specific supplement on our statistics capacity building project. So last year's focus was on remote sensing. This year's focus has been on CAPI. So I would encourage you to go ahead and read that. In terms of our modus operandi for funding, we primarily rely on technical assistance. And these technical assistance projects not only support NSOs, but other line ministries as well, including the Ministry of Agriculture. In addition to the core technical assistance of the ADB, we have several in-house funds, such as the Korea Fund, such as the Japan Fund for Poverty Reduction. The common theme among all these different funds is the focus on innovation technology. So a lot of our emphasis, particularly in agricultural statistics, is to support countries that want to pilot these types of new methods and technologies. So, for example, we worked with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency to implement their software for rice area detection quite recently, and we customized that software for 4 pilot countries: Philippines, Lao PDR, Thailand, and Vietnam. One of the things we are really trying to emphasize is this idea of having digital parcel boundaries, so digitized parcel boundaries, so that you can actually facilitate data transfer across the different hierarchies of national data collection systems. We have to be careful that we're being consistent with the privacy and the confidentiality concerns of the countries, but these are the types of pilots that we're working on, and we we hope that the countries will sort of adopt them and take them forward and scale it up to a national level. In fact, for CAPI, we worked with Vietnam quite recently for the labor force survey, and I'm actually happy to announce that they scaled it up to we only did a pilot in a couple of provinces, and they were able to scale it up at the national level, and in fact, they've gone ahead and implemented CAPI surveys, a census of population census fully on CAPI. So I think that there are ways to try and work on pilots, given that our funding pool is relatively restricted to innovation and technology, but to try these tools and techniques and then help countries to sort of scale it up more broadly. So I think I'll end there, but the focus, the message that we want to push is Asia and the Pacific is really interested in innovation, digital innovation, technology, and that's the direction for agricultural statistics that we are looking to support.
Thank you, Nasrat, for your insightful remarks. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the countries. Okay, and we are going to start our second round. I'm going to change a little bit the rules of the game as time is pressing. So instead of asking you a response of 5 minutes, I would like you to be able to respond in 3 minutes maximum. So the question for the countries is the following. Do you assess the financial support received by donors as optimal? How can countries prepare themselves to mobilize sustainable resources toward agricultural statistics? What is required? And if there is time, if you can make some remarks about how do you see the role for the private sector in financing the collection of better data. Let's start with Mrs. Hans-Line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. First, I would like to answer the question. I tried my best. Actually, I don't so much understand about the meaning of the question, but I try my best to answer. The first, I would say that the National Institute of Statistics received support from the development partners in the last 30 years for all the statistic activities such as population census, agriculture survey, agriculture census, socio-economic survey, demographic and health survey, and so on. And all the development partners supported all the activities such as UNFPA, ADB, World Bank, USAID, OSAID, UNICEF, SIDA, FAO, World Food Program, Germany, Japan, ICAS, JICA, and ILO, and etc. And they are all have a good cooperation and coordination with the National Institute of Statistics. And how can the country prepare for the mobilized sustainable resource toward agricultural statistics? I told in my speech that according to law, we have a statistic law that stated that National Institute of Statistics have to conduct all the census and survey, such as population census, agriculture census, economic census every 10 years, and some survey, annually survey and 5-year survey like demographic and health survey every 5 years. And this is we stated in the statistic law, and we also stated in the National Strategy for Development of Statistics. And we currently we have a new support by Prime Minister according to the dialogue between UN and the Prime Minister in June, that request to Prime Minister to allocate more budget to the statistic activity. So now we hope that by phasing out of the donor, we will have use the full budget of the government. However, we still require technical support, technical assistance from development partner, and we also need the capacity building from the DP also. And I think that the private sector should play very important role in the cooperation and coordination with the National Institute of Statistics, not just technical, but private sector has to contribute some financing for better data collection, for better data, because private sector also benefit from the data also. Without data, they cannot do anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So quickly on the first part of the question in terms of donors, and was it optimal? We had this experience also after the breakthrough when we came from the previous system to an open economy and later on joined the European Union. My impression was always that even though these funds were spent like not very good in a very good and effective way, these were not sometimes coordinated well. And this is why I see the initiative, like I was presenting yesterday, this 50, 20, 30, as a kind of like a good example when two international organizations are joining the forces, going into the strategic partnership and kind of coordinate the funding and the spending. So I think the coordination was always the biggest issue, and it is still is, as we are trying to take part in this kind of development programs internationally. We see that there are many sources, many donors, not always very well coordinated. Then the second part, and how can countries prepare themselves to mobilize sustainable resources? I have a few advices on that. First one, to make it sustainable, assure at least minimum level of financing at the national level for producing the core statistics, really core statistics. That's the first thing. The second one, I would still suggest what I mentioned before, try to integrate as deeply as possible, and it was also explained by our colleague Gara here, that into the development agenda of your country, and just make the point out of statistics that this is really needed in all these other areas, and it's a holistic thing. It's not like a separate domain, so you can really do a lot of trying to communicate the role of statistics in this manner, and make sure you do this. The third thing is go into the strategic partnerships with everybody else, not only with the other parts of the government, but also with the academia, NGOs, international organizations, depending on the objective, depending on the domain, depending on the needs, whatever, that may be many factors in behind, but try to be as close as possible to as many stakeholders as possible in order to tie yourself within this bigger organism, which is your country and your international surroundings. And the third thing, the third part of this, is there a role for the public sector? First of all, I would like to say that my impression is that the private sector would prefer the opposite. They would like to take our money and produce our statistics first, but for known reasons, this is not necessarily good, and we should sustain our operations. But there is some kind of a common field that we can work together, and I guess actually for many of the needs that even the private sector has, we are the only ultimate source of data, just because we have the access and we can integrate the data on a very confidential level from different sources, which no one else is allowed to do, and that's why we should kind of like look for kind of common interest and try to integrate our works and for the common good. And the third thing, it's 30 minutes started, but the third thing in this remark, I can tell you, I'm still a part of a business to government data sharing expert group at the European level, of the European Commission level, and we're preparing a final document which is going to be published next month. Just pay attention to it. It's very interesting. It's trying to kind of mobilize European Commission to kind of establish something that we call the national data governance, in which we will also propose to have an access to the private data as the private companies have the access to the public data. So we're trying to enhance this overall ecosystem of data sharing. That's going to be a very interesting issue in the coming years, and I think that also contributes to this cooperation issue here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Now, let's go to the side of the multilaterals. And the question for all of you is the following. What are the future prospects? And considering that you belong to organizations that fund statistics by yourself and also work in partnership with other donors, what do you think that are the future prospects for the funding of agricultural statistics? It is going to be a brighter future, or if it is going to be a world in which the resilience of national statistical offices will have to prevail? How do countries need to adjust to meet the new requirements of the donor community? And again, if there is time, can you say something about how do you see a role for the private sector in financing the collection of better data? Jero, please.
Thank you, Jose. So you change the role of the games. I will speak faster. I think that's my only option. So first part of the question, is the future bright? I will maintain my positive spin for the next couple of minutes. But the question is that how bright is going to be. It'll depend. It's endogenous in a way. It depends on us. So the amount of funding that is going to come our way, the length of the positive spell, because I think, as I was saying before, we are in a positive trend, will depend on what we do and how effectively and efficiently we use the resources that we have. So we, in a way, like I think that it's fine to have crying statisticians, but at the same time, I think we need to see the future in a very positive way. Now, looking at the trend, so since the 2008 World Development Report, right, and the crisis hit, the world food price crisis, so everybody woke up on the need for more data, for better data. So As I say, like we just said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So there was a lot of attention to looking for data that were not there. There was a lot of more attention, like we just said, to support data. So that has been about 10 years now. So now, what's happening now? Bill Gates, in the opening statement, kind of emphasize kind of there is another crisis, like climate change. What is the role of agriculture? How is it going to get impacted by climate change? This is kind of goes to my first point. Let's not package agriculture as a standalone. It's like how agriculture, through agriculture, climate change is going to be affecting people, like how it's going to be affecting extreme poverty, malnutrition, food insecurity, and massive migration. So these are kind of big picture thing that we need to think about when we want to sell agriculture. Because in a way, I mean, the issue here is like how we make agriculture data more relevant to the issue at hand. The other thing that I think probably, in order to maintain this bright future, at least, like I mean, just to lessen the dark future, is we need to do a better job at quantifying benefits of data. So, which kind of goes along the lines of what I was saying before. So we are really good and especially donors are really good at quantifying the cost because that's your budget. So, but we need to do a better job at quantifying, like, what is the value of those data. Ben Paul yesterday mentioned, like, in a scarce environment, fundy environment, a ministry needs to choose between building a road and putting money into data. We haven't made the case that we need to know where this road is going, how many people it's serving, what is the impact of building that road. So it's not an issue either or. You might need to build the road, but you need to know where you build it. And and I think, again, we have not made the case. We are not really linked with the user. One last point that I want to make, like about a couple of ICAS ago, we made a little experiment. We brought the economist into the fray. So kind of like we brought to the president of the International Association of Agricultural Economists, no statistician, to see, like, I mean, just like, those are the ultimate users. Those are the ultimate people, the people that ultimately they're going to convert your data into messages, into policy relevant messages. And so we started, but we didn't continue. So perhaps it's something to think about for future ICAS.
Thank you, Jero. Ben Paul?
Thank you. Well, I'm not as positive as Jero. The prospects of financing statistics, particularly agricultural statistics in Africa, I see this challenge actually continuing going forward, because our assessment of the resource availability for African countries to collect data seems to be remaining there. It doesn't seem to be reducing. And what I see as the future of statistics in Africa, I would like to borrow the Poland example. It is for countries, for national statistics offices, to ensure that statistics is built in the development planning framework so that it is seen as an indispensable element. And it is that indispensability that will make governments to invest in statistics. Because you see, if a country is looking for data and it needs it, like the crisis that Jero talked about, because of the crisis, there was this rush to invest in statistics that was non-existent. So in the same way, governments, national statistics offices need to identify statistics with specific development agenda and invest there. So that the future of statistics is in governments funding statistics, not development partners. because they are a bit of, most of them would want to provide the loans and not the grants. And meanwhile, countries are more looking to grants than the loans. So there's a bit of a problem. The next part of the question, how do they need to prepare? Yes, they need to prepare like that to make sure that they make statistics indispensable. So the ball is in the court of national statistics officers to make statistics indispensable so that it can be invested in. On the part of the private sector, by the way, is increasingly seeing that data has value. In the olden days, the private sector would operate blindly. But now, we are in the data era. So they are seeing the importance of data. But the question is, how much can they contribute to that data? Yes, they may. They could, cooperate with the national statistics offices to reduce the cost of getting data. To me, that's how I would see it as their contribution, reducing the cost of getting the data so that, data is got more cheaply. But contributing directly to data production, I don't see that, in the African context, I don't see that coming very, very, very easily. And that's my take.
Thank you, Ben Paul. Nagraj, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm very optimistic about the private sector's involvement in agricultural statistics. And I'll tell you why. Every time you do a Google search, that data is going to Google, they're using it, they're developing businesses, they're making money out of it, right? So there's obviously a logic behind, they see the value in data. So I think we need to sort of incorporate the same model about thinking about data as having value and champion that, market it, and convince our stakeholders, our partners, that this is important. On that one, I think we had a session earlier sponsored by the Asian Development Bank on partnering with private sector firms to improve agricultural statistics. We had firms that are working on improving crop yields in the region. We had firms that are looking at improving farmer information through digital technology, so be it through tablets, be it through mobile phones, and so on and so forth. I think that there is an opportunity. I think you can try to cut down survey costs by taking advantage of these tools and techniques. So for example, when you're going out to a respondent and you're collecting data, a lot of times the questions that are asked is, what do I get out of this, right? And the feedback that we want to give them is, well, this data is going to be used for policy making, and you're going to have more access to seeds or more access to fertilizers and so on and so forth. That takes time. They don't see the tangible evidence right away. But I think we can work with private sector to provide advisory services using the data that are being collected, as long as we work closely with within the parameters of the statistics laws and the laws set by the ministries of agriculture, so that there is a complementarity between the users and the producers and ultimately the beneficiaries, which are the poor farmers. So again, I'm very optimistic about private sector involvement, but also optimistically cautious about some of the challenges associated with data confidentiality and privacy and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagraj, and thank you to all the panelists for your interventions. So I would like to finish this panel by saying that I want also to be positive. I also want to be positive, but it is very clear that we have to be smarter to find the ways of getting funding for statistics. So we can be in the party, we can be in the celebration party, but we have to make our effort. We have said many things here. Let me just summarize them very briefly. So first, that we have to learn how to negotiate better, okay, within our own governments. Negotiating better means that we have to learn how to speak the languages. For example, to speak the language of the people that are in the Ministry of Finance. We have to be able to create a business case for statistics, explaining to them how spending on statistics is not an actual expenditure, it's actually an investment that gets translated in savings for the regular budget. For example, by collecting data, we can target and specific interventions, and because of that better targeting mechanism, we will be able to save this amount of money. We can also say that collecting this type of data, we are going to be able to know much more about the specific situation in order to develop more efficient programs that will allow to save us this amount of money. That is the kind of language that ministers of finance speak, and we have to be much better to speak in the language that they speak. We also have to coordinate better within the institutions. We have to communicate better, not only with the government, but also with the general society. We have to raise the awareness that we exist, that statistics are important, and that is very much related on packaging, because that was another key messages, packaging agricultural statistics in a much broader, not only statistical agenda, but also a much bigger development agenda. We have to be able to see the big picture and make the case of agricultural statistics in that big picture, in that very much bigger development agenda. And the last message that I would like to highlight is the development of partnerships. Partnerships, and partnerships. If we want to have some economies of scale on the things that we do, if we want to escalate our efforts, partnership is the way. We have to join forces in order to be able to reach our objectives. With that, I would like to thank all of you to attend this session, and I would like please to give a hand to our panelists. Thank you very much.
Now we have come to the end of this plenary session, which was the last session in the series of this gigantic 8th International Conference on Agriculture Statistics. I thank the chair, Mr. Jose Rosero Moniaca, Director, Statistics Division, Food and Agriculture Organization, Rome, for wonderfully conducting this session. I also thank all the speakers for sharing their views on financing agricultural statistics. And now I would request Dr. Trilochan Mahapatra, Secretary, Department of Agricultural Research and Education, and Director General, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, to please come on the dais and facilitate the chair and our dear speakers. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors. Now we have come to the end of all the sessions of ICAS 8, and in few moments from now, we'll start the closing ceremony. So once again, huge round of applause for ICAS 8. And I thank one and all who are associated with this great conference. Thank you.